This is the first video on using Excel for calculating financial functions, financial problems. We're going to have several new ones that you've not seen before, but we're going to start off with one that is a review from last year, and that is our PMT function that we learned last year. I'm just going to start off with doing a few sample problems, and then I'll kind of introduce what we're going with this in some new functions. PMT, of course, finds the monthly payment for a car loan, or I say a car loan, it could be any type of loan. And the three parameters that it takes is the rate, the length, and the amount of the loan. And let me remind you that the rate is always given in months. The lengths, and when I say rate and give it in months, for example, let me flip over here and show you an advertisement for a federal credit loan, and it mentions 2.15% APR. The A there stands for annual. So they're going to give you terms annually. And so what we're going to do is we're going to convert them back to months. So you just divide by 12. Okay, so when we give any rate I give you will always be in annual terms, and you'll convert it back to months for this first part. The length, even if it gives you in years, you need to convert it to months. So for example, I remind you that auto loans are typically between 3 and 6 years. So we would say, what is 3 years in months? Well, that's 36 months up to, well, 5 years would be 60, 6 years would be 72 months. Just make sure this is months. They have to agree in the same terms. So if this is months, this has to be months. And then the amount is just straightforward. That's the amount that you're actually borrowing. Remember that if you have any kind of down payment, you don't have to borrow that money, so it takes off the car loan. So if you are buying a $20,000 car and you have a $2,000 down payment, your loan amount is only for $18,000. So let's just do a quick little problem here and remind you how this works. Let's just do that $18,000. Just remember in Excel, you don't have to put any kind of commas or dollar signs. They have values up here that can convert it to currency, for example, so you don't have to type those in. Let's say we're doing 36 months on this car. I'll do 48. Make it a little bit easier to pay off. And then the interest rate, remember, and there's actually two ways you can do this. You can divide it by 12 in your formula, or you can put it divided now. I'm going to go ahead and put equals point oh. You don't need it. I was going to do a math problem. I won't need that now. 0.0215. There's your 2.15%. Again, if you prefer, you can convert that to a decimal. Notice that it's rounding it. It's not really rounding. It's not just showing us the entire. So I'm going to increase the number of decimal places using this increase and decrease and decimal. And then the monthly payments we're actually going to type. Now remember, because I'm putting it in monthly terms, I'm sorry, annual terms, I'm going to have to convert that in my problem. So equals PMT, parentheses. And again, one of the powerful features of Excel is to not have to kind of redo or retype math problems. So for example, here, I'm not going to type 0.02. I'm just going to click B3. That's very important that we just link to B3 so we can make changes to B3. I'm going to divide by 12, comma. The length of the loan is right here in B2. It kind of highlights that to remind you that it's highlighting that's the active cell. And then finally, my B1 is my price of my car. So $391.69. Remember, that is negative. That's indicated because it's red, and that is because we're having to spend that money each month. That's going to be very, very important in this new section as we get to some new types of problems, because we're going to be dealing with both negative and positive values here. And so you just have to really keep straight. Are you spending that money or are you making that money? Okay. So that's PMT. That is strictly for finding the loan for the monthly payment for a. I say monthly payment. We typically deal with months, but you could, as long as this was in weeks or years, you could do this in any type of term. But it's almost always done in monthly payments. And I just want to introduce our next concept. We're going to learn several new functions regarding, but I won't get into the actual function in this first video to keep it a little bit shorter. But the concept of present and future value, and those are very important terms in Excel. When we say present value, what we're saying is, what is the value, what is a certain amount of money in the future worth today? And that may be a little confusing to think about, but if I have $100,000 10 years from now, what is that money worth today? We're going to use Excel to answer that question. Future value is the opposite. I have $5,000 now. What will that be worth in X amount of years in the future, when I'm getting ready to retire, for example, or maybe when I'm getting ready to apply for a college loan for something like that. So one is working backwards, one is kind of working forwards, present and future value. Um, Before I get to some just kind of more examples of this, I want to stress what I mean by worth. That word worth can mean a couple of different things. I'm going to speak in financial terms, meaning talking about investing in a stock, in a mutual fund, in some sort of IRA. You're investing in a bank basically. What will that money be worth? Assume that I take some money now and invest it. What will it be worth in the future? I'm not speaking in economic terms. That's why I put the line through it. Economic terms implies things like inflation, and hopefully you're aware that a dollar today is not going to buy a dollar's worth of value in the future. It's going to buy less. So that's an economic aspect. We're not going to really worry about the economic of you've heard many times that they talk historically that $1 million in 1970s is now worth or now worth this much. That's an economic problem. We're going to speak financially and assume that the value was invested, and assuming that you're not losing in your investments, that your investments are actually making money. We're going to speak strictly in financial terms. So for example, in present value, you may want to know, I need $15,000 in 5 years. What do I need to have now and be investing in some sort of bank account in order to have $15,000 in the future? Many times we have a goal and we want to know what we need to work towards that goal. Now, I'll go ahead and mention how this problem works. This problem works in one of two different ways. A, we can just put a lump sum of money in a bank and let it just grow and accrue interest, and then we'll eventually have our goal. Obviously, that will take a long time, or that will take longer than if this function also allows us to assume we put an amount of money in the bank and we also add to it each month. Taking into account the interest we're making will eventually meet our goal much faster, obviously, if you're putting money towards it each month. And we'll get to some very specific examples of that. Future value is saying I have $2,000 now. I'm going to put it in a bank account. I'm going to put it in a nice, safe savings account, something like that. What will I have in 2 years, in 5 years, in 20 years? We're going to do problems that represent retirement. If I put $200 in a bank every single month, what will I have when I'm 65? Things like that. We're going to apply interest rates to these kind of investment problems to find out what we'll have in the future. And you can hopefully see that Excel, you can hopefully see that Excel helps you deal with the interest. The compounding interest is kind of always a difficult problem to do by hand, time consuming. So one of the powers of Excel is that it can quickly take all the interest and tell you exactly how something will work out in the future, or vice versa in the present, as you'll see. So this is the present value function and the future value function. The next video that you're going to watch, we'll get into the actual how to use these and how to work on a few problems. So for now, just want to remind you exactly how to do the PMT function. Remember, it is, just to remind you one more time, it's rate in months, length in months, and then finally the amount. That will give you a negative number because the value will always be negative, because you're always going to be spending that each month because you're paying back a loan. That's the PMT function, and next time we'll learn about the present value and the future value functions in Excel.